John, thank you so much for the time. How you doing today?
Great. Just finished playing tennis. Trying to, work off the fat.
How'd you do?
Uh, okay. I haven't played in a while. I hurt my ankle, so I haven't played in about 8 weeks. But I've been playing since I'm 8 years old, so I could take a little time off to try and heal.
Yeah, I haven't played tennis admittedly in a little while either, but it's always good to get out and run around a little bit to do something that involves something more than merely just running. To chase a ball around makes that activity so much more worthwhile.
Yeah, I've been playing since I'm 8, but I started taking lessons with Alex Olmedo, who was in '88. Alex was like the singles and doubles national champion in the '50s and Wimbledon champion. He beat Rod Laver in the Hall of Fame, uh, and anyway, he was the greatest guy, and it was exciting to hit with him because I go I'm learning what the pros do. Of course, I couldn't do it, but it was the attempt. But because of him, I got a lot better and I got into it.
Well, it feels
It's a
good.
tough game.
Well, it feels good getting aced by somebody who is a world champion. It's like getting
I
dunked on
aced
by.
him
Oh, did
a
you?
lot. Yeah. I could never beat him. One time he was like 81. He goes, do it like this. It was like he jumped rope like a 20-year-old boxer at 81. He goes, do it like this. And he moved so fast and my jaw dropped open. He's like, what? I go, you look like you were 20. And then I said, when you're playing with me, how hard are you trying? Like what, 10%? He goes, yeah. The pros people go, are you good? I go, well, good for an amateur, but you go, how the pros, you go, how many levels are they above you? Above, like, say, an A player at a club or a player at five. I go, they're like, they say seven, they rank them, but they're like 30 levels above. I mean, it's totally, if, it's just crazy, how fast they are and how good and that's why it's so hard because you get better and then the ball keeps coming faster and faster. So you have less and less time, you know. And by the way, they say tennis players live the longest. I think that's true. I'm going to be 108 next July.
My research has failed me then because I thought it was a few decades younger than that. I'm also always in awe of guys who were able to dominate a sport at a time where the equipment wasn't insanely technologically forward. Like you look at what tennis rackets used to be. I'm a child of the 80s, so I was playing with my grandparents' rackets while also getting access to the newer, tight stringed rackets with the bigger club face. Those guys that were able to go out and win tournament after tournament with the wooden rackets where the club head was about the size of a baseball. There was something different.
Yeah, that's what I grew up playing. You wood. Yeah, compared to there was zero technology. It was just wood, basically a stick, and you had to they go, you got to hit in the sweet spot right in the middle. And if you didn't, the ball wouldn't go anywhere. And then I remember when they came out with the first um, tennis racket, there was a Wilson T2000, and Jimmy Connors started using that. And then they had Arthur Ashe had the head racket. And I remember my dad got one, and I hit a ball and it went over. And I was maybe, I don't know, 11 or 12, and I was just like, Dad, I go, it's not me, it's the racket. I barely touched it. With a wood racket, the ball wouldn't, it would dribble to the net. This thing, it flew over it with no effort. I mean, there's a huge difference. But those guys, Pete Sampras, talk about dominating. He was number one um, player in the world for 6 years in a row. It's unbelievable how hard that is to do that. You know, he always says that's his proudest accomplishment, which I understand it's huge to beat everybody for. I mean, but and you hold their rackets and you couldn't hit their ball with their racket. It weighs like they put metal tape around it, so it weighs more, and they string it at like 80 pounds. And you go, which is like a brick wall. And they go, why? They go, they generate their own power. It's for control.
Huh.
But
Wait,
it's so
the
stiff. And if you were to a real pro racket, they're so stiff
huh.
and heavy and no give. But that's because they're so strong. They need it because they're it's like golf. Their swing speed is so way above any, it's 30, 40 miles above a regular player.
I'm glad you
But
just mentioned Jimmy Connors because he was one of my first sports idols. He was a lefty and I was a lefty, and I didn't know a whole lot of left-handed tennis players. So I was a big Jimmy Connors fan, and then he also cracked me up to watch how he conducted himself on court at times. But I set that up because in preparing for this conversation, John, I heard that your first idol was one Willie Mays. You wanted to be Willie Mays all the way up until your
yeah.
teenage years when you realized that you couldn't be a black baseball player. But you actually admitted in a different conversation that you got to meet Willie Mays at one point. What was that like?
Oh God, it was so great. It was yeah, based from 7 to 15, I was just or eight. Baseball was I was obsessed, and I finally realized like I'm nowhere near good enough, and but I loved it. It was my passion. So what happened was I got to play. My friend Casey Sander is an actor on Grace Under Fire and different shows. We were in the Groundlings, but he was a baseball player right at in the minors. Right out of high school, he got drafted by the Angels for played in the single A ball for 4 years, and he's like great athlete. And I go, well, I'm not even close to how good he was. It's crazy. But anyway, he got invited. He said, John, they have this thing called Major League Baseball Alumni Association in St. Petersburg. So I got to go and I got to be on the field playing baseball with Tug McGraw and Bob Feller and met Vida Blue. And so Vida Blue was nice as ever, the great A's pitcher. And we talk about Willie Mays. So he goes, well, if you're ever in San Francisco, let me know and I'll introduce you. So a couple years later, I was up there for the World Series. So I called Vida Blue in San Francisco, and he goes, "Oh, hey, John." I go, "Well, remember you said to call you to meet Willie Mays?" He goes, "Oh yeah, yeah. All right, meet me." And we went, and he went in the suite. He goes, "I'll tell him who you are, and if he Vida Blue goes, if he comes out, and then I'll come back out and tell you if he says yes or no." I go, all right, well, I appreciate you trying. I understand. So I'm waiting for about 5 minutes, and all the door opens, and I'm thinking, oh, there's Vida, but it was Willie Mays. And I was just like, and I couldn't believe it. And I said to Vida Blue, I go, I'm afraid I'll start crying. He goes, don't, because if you start crying, I'll start crying. He was my idol too. And people are Willie Mays was like, I would say Michael Jordan is the Willie Mays of basketball. I mean, he was that guy, or he was like Tiger Woods in golf, or Jack Nicklaus, or whoever. Babe Ruth. He was the Babe Ruth of it. He was. You ask anybody, even Ted Williams who saw Babe Ruth, everybody, and anybody, Tommy Lasorda of the Dodgers, everybody who asked said Willie Mays was the greatest ball player they ever saw. Like no one ever goes. And then there was him. He was just on another like Jordan in basketball, just another level. And so, but anyway, I got to meet him, and he couldn't have been nicer, and I was just thrilled.
Well,
And I also liked him. He was a great person. You could tell he loved baseball, and 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 he was just always positive, and there'd be fights, and he would be breaking them up. He wouldn't be starting them. And anyway, he was a great role model.
that's one of those things that's important to note with somebody like that because there are a lot of incredible athletes over time, but there's also a lot of asshole amazing athletes over time. He was maybe a better human being than he was a baseball player, and he's one of the all-time great baseball players.
Well, he was great. You know who else I met who was complete opposite of his reputation, I have to say, and couldn't have been nicer and was like happy and warm and friendly to the point where I said, "Who's this guy they write about?" I go, "This was Barry Bonds."
Hmm.
And I met Barry at a basketball game. He couldn't have been nicer, and he knew who I was. And I said, "Oh, Willie Mays." And he goes, I go, "What's Willie like?" He goes, "The best." And then Barry Bonds goes, "Well, if you're ever in San Francisco, you can come, hit in the thing batting cage. I'll introduce you to Willie Mays." I'm like, "What?" But I never took him up on it. But Barry, if you're listening, he couldn't have been nicer. And I said, who is this guy they write about? You're nothing. He goes, I don't know. He was happy, smiling, cheery, friendly, complete opposite, you know. But I can understand kind of because if you've ever dealt with the press and they're doing a story on you, and then the story, and they're all friendly, and then the story comes out and they're just ripping you. And they go, well, he only talked about himself. It's like, well, you asked me questions about myself. I mean, what was I? Go, what? You interviewed me about my career, so that's what I talked about.
Yeah.
I mean, I've seen it, or they misquote you, or they most of the press, you know, they're interviewing people that you know they want to do what they're doing and they couldn't, so they end up writing about it. And if they have low self esteem and they're interviewing people that are you know, they have no money, the reporters, and compared to the people they're interviewing, and a lot of them just get jealous, you know, and they go, "I'll show you. Who do you think you are?" You go, "I'm just you asked to interview me. I'm just showing up." You know, it's
Yeah,
weird.
he was also setting records at a time where things were getting really weird with baseball, where all of a sudden there was this sanctimoniousness about performance enhancing drugs in the sport, and
Well, they allowed it. I mean, but
completely agree.
When Bud Selig said we have to investigate the use of steroids in baseball, like he just found out, and I remember talking to a ball player 7 years before that, and And I said, what percentage of the league do you think is using steroids? He goes, 40. And then somebody goes, more like 90. And even my friend Casey goes, well, they're talking about the hitters. He goes, watch what's next to pitchers. So to me, if everybody's using it, then it's a level playing field. So what's the problem?
Well, I think there's different levels of it also. Like it's not a binary conversation. There's nuance that I think is important for us to explore. As a matter of fact, on my show yesterday, I had a PhD sports performance scientist who was making the argument that we need to be more lenient towards certain quote unquote performance enhancing drugs, the ones that aren't necessarily making you much bigger, stronger, and faster. But what about those drugs that help you heal up a little bit quicker so you can back out on the field of play? Like HGH is one of those things that doesn't have
Yeah.
immediate benefits in terms of the strength gains, but it can help you recover from ligament, tendon, and muscle injuries a little bit faster.
Well, I remember in the 60s playing baseball. I was a kid, but they'd always go, if you're baseball, you don't want to lift weights. It'll make you muscle bound and you can't swing. So could you say then, well, then what about all the players so they lift weights now? So is that not fair? I mean, players get bigger, faster, stronger, and I think Barry Bonds should be in the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous, you know, that he's not.
No
And
question.
I mean, the guy was you know, everyone says if let's say he didn't do it or not, he was still would have gone down as one of the greatest ball players ever.
Mm.
Even Willie Mays said, "You're the great." He goes, "You." He said, "You live up to your potential. You'll be one of the greatest better than me, bet one of the greatest ball players ever." You know, and then you hear him talk about hitting and stuff. I go, well, that's just him being brilliant about understanding baseball and the game. So I don't think but then I talked to another ball player. He goes, "Well, it's that you can generate more bat speed earlier in the swing. So instead of catching the ball out front, you can catch it late and still and a ball that would normally stay inside the park goes farther for a home run." Well, I guess. I mean, I don't know,
Here's the
but
thing, though.
they
You
were
can't
all
just,
doing it. I mean,
yeah,
so isn't that a level playing field?
that's a part of it. If 90% of guys are doing it, that levels the playing field. And it's not like you can just take the substance and all of a sudden you're better. You still have to put the work in, too.
Yeah, that's what I said. I go. How does it make you a hitter, a better baseball player, or any sport? You know. But they allowed. But the other thing is they allowed it. Remember, it happened right after the baseball strike, and then Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa were hitting all those home runs, and people started flying back to the baseball. You know, and I actually met Mark McGuire back then, and he's a very nice guy. But I remember looking at his leg. I go, he's huge. But they're all bigger. You know, they're all. When I was growing up, like there was one ball player. No, there was two that were like above 6'1". There was Frank Howard,
Mm.
who was 6'7", and there was Boog Powell on the Orioles, who was 6'4", and you knew of them because it was so unusual that a baseball player was that big, tall. Now there's their average then was like 5'11", 6 feet. Now they're all 6'3". They're all like what 6'3" and above. I mean, they're huge.
Yeah. One other baseball player that I think is important to note was just an awesome human being. I lived and worked in Chicago for a little while, and Ernie Banks had the nickname Mr. Cub. He played for the Cubs, made a bunch of all-star teams. But the reason why he became Mr. Cub was not just because he was really good at baseball. He was legitimately one of the most gracious people on planet Earth. He would take time to stop and talk to just about anybody who stopped him on the streets. Not just that though, he would make an effort to ask them about them. So they were, of course, want to talk to him and maybe they're getting nervous or whatnot. He would ask, oh, where you're from, where's your family from, what do you do? And it was genuine. It wasn't anything other than
Yeah.
having a genuine curiosity about the world around him.
Well, I got to meet him twice, and one was that after I did A League of Their Own, the baseball movie,
Mm.
and I got invited to there was I couldn't believe they were having a Hall of Fame dinner. It was the first one. I go, you've never had one before? They go, no. So I got to present um, on stage three ball players. You can't believe who I met. But anyway, I'll tell you this. But Ernie Banks was there, and the guy just glowed. He was so friendly. And then I ran into him again at this public golf course in Studio City, and he just was as friendly as can be. I go,
Yeah.
you'd always say, let's play two. He goes, let's play two. He didn't. He said it. But he was a very friendly guy.
Who else
Yeah,
did you meet at this Hall of Fame dinner?
well, this is, it sounds like I'm making it up, but I'm not. So they go, you can bring up players of the 40s. So this is who and they had guys like Corbin Burton was there because he'd been in Major League, and he got to bring up ball players. So that I would have been able to bring up Willie Mays. They said, but he wasn't there. I go, but he was in the 50s. They go, yeah, but you said you like him, so I go, oh my god. So this is unbelievable who I got to bring up. First, I brought up Stan Musial, then Ted Williams,
Wow.
and then Joe DiMaggio.
Oh my God.
I know. I couldn't believe it. And Ted Williams came up, and this is before he was, in a wheelchair. So he was standing there. And I looked up, the guy was huge. I don't know how tall he was, but I just remember maybe he was 6'4". Looked huge. And he goes, sorry, I don't know who you are. I go, don't worry about it. I go, that's okay. I go, I know who you are. And it was an honor to bring you up. I didn't care. I was like, what? Me? You? Don't worry about it. And I sat next to Bobby Dorr. Oh, and you know who was there was Maury Povich with Connie Chung. And Maury was there with his dad. And his dad was a very famous sports writer, Shirley Povich. And
Yeah.
that's why Maury was there. And oh gosh, Johnny Mize was there and he passed away like 3 weeks later. Don Drysdale, Tom Seaver, Whitey Ford, Ernie Banks, the guys I met. I mean, it was unbelievable. And all these men, I'm in my 30s, guys in their 60s, around these ball players. It's like we were all 10 again. And we're like,
Imagine.
oh, these are the guys. Yeah, it was fantastic.
Did you say Hank Aaron was there too?
I don't think he was there, but I did get to meet him. But they had a premiere of the movie City Slickers in Atlanta,
Mhm.
and Hank Aaron. There was me and Billy Crystal was there, and I think Jack Palance, and then and uh and then they had a parade. But anyway, at this meeting, they had it in Atlanta because Ted Turner had just bought he owned New Line and he just bought the company Castle Rock that did City Slickers. So they had a premiere there, and I remember going to premiere in Atlanta. I mean, LA, New York, but who's going to be there? This premiere, it was bigger than the Oscars. They had a parade. 5,000 people took us 20 minutes to cross the street. Then they had the premiere in a movie theater that had Gone with the Wind in it, and the movie theater had 4,600 seats. so you and they just loved the movie, and you never heard laughs like this. They were huge. But I remember before we go, we had a picture, and there was the mayor of Atlanta and Ted Turner with his then wife Jane Fonda and Jimmy Carter, President Carter, and Rosalind Carter was there, and Hank Aaron was there, and he goes, "Here, I signed a hat for you." I go, "Oh my God, thank you," and he couldn't have been nicer. I mean, yeah, he and Willie Mays were the two guys my friend and I idolized growing up.
So I never completely know a comedian's stand-up journey until I really get to researching and talking to them, And I've been a fan of your comedy for a long time, going back to SNL. In my opinion, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled is convincing the world that it wasn't Jon Lovitz. You are the world's greatest devil, and I will fight anybody who suggests otherwise.
I couldn't agree more.
But I had no idea of when or how you started stand-up comedy. I was a little bit surprised to learn that it wasn't until about 20 years ago that you really started focusing on stand-up. What was it at that time that led you into the stand-up realm?
Well, I used to imitate uh, Woody Allen had been a stand-up. I saw his first movie when I was 13, Take the Money and Run. And that's like, I want to be a comedian like Woody Allen. And then the movie Lenny came out with Lenny Bruce, starring Dustin Hoffman. And I'd never heard of Lenny Bruce. So I went to the record store, which is weird they don't have anymore. So I went to the comedy section and I saw Woody Allen had been a stand-up, which I didn't know, and Lenny Bruce. So I used to do their routines in my dorm. And I always wanted to do it, but I never did it. And then I would try. I got SNL, and Dennis Miller goes, "You could be a stand-up," and I tried it once, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was bad, but I would try little things here and there over the years. And I remember on SNL, I met Robin Williams, and I knew him, met him a few times before, but him and I'd ask him and Eddie Murphy. I became friends with, and Dana Carvey and Dennis Miller. They were the four best stand-ups in the country. I said, "Do you think I could be a stand-up?" And they all said yes. But I'd watch Dana and Dennis. They were so great. I go, I can't do that. They're just for an hour just going, and I go, how do you do that? But anyway, I finally started really doing it. I was 46 and I hadn't worked in a long time. The movie roles had stopped. And I said to my agent and manager, can you get me work? Because I go, I'm not broke, but I'm going to run out of money in 5 years. And they both said, why don't you sell your house? And I got so mad because one was building a mansion and one had just bought one. And I just said, these guys, they just stopped, for years. And I was so mad. So I thought, you know what? That's it. I'm gonna learn how to be a stand up and fire both of them. That's what I did because otherwise I'm just gonna go broke. These guys are just done, you know?
Hmm.
And so that's what I did. And I started hosting shows with people from Saturday Night Live that were already stand-ups like Kevin Nealon and Norm Macdonald and
Yeah.
Victoria Jackson. And then I started opening for Norm, and then I stand up, not actually opening. And then I started co-headlining with Norm for about a year, and then I finally went on my own. And now, yeah, it was 21 years ago, and I love it, but it takes a long time to get really good.
Well, yeah, and one of the biggest challenges there, and I've heard other stand-ups talk about this, is finding your true voice. Do you feel like you had a leg up in that process, considering that you were a trained actor and you had performed in front of live audiences on SNL and with the Groundlings going all the way back to the early 1980s, that it helped accelerate that process for you a little bit, John?
Oh yeah, because this sounds weird, but I mean, I went to the Laugh Factory, and the owner Jamie Masada always said he put me up. So he goes, "All right, you're up next." I go, "I want to start doing stand up." I go, so I was like, so I did like 5 minutes, and he said, buddy, in 2 months you'll be one of the top five comics here. I go, and I said, "What? Are you crazy?" I go, "It takes like 10 years." He goes, "No, buddy." He's from, all right. He's actually talking. You have something the other comics don't have. I go, "What?" He goes, "Timing." I said, "Timing? What do you mean they don't have it? That's kind of basic, isn't it?" But that's what he said. But I don't think I was in 4 months. But I would try it for about 3 months, once a week. I go, forget it. It was too nerve wracking. And then I went back the next year. But yeah, it was. I already had Yeah, you have to think, well, who am I going to be on stage? And then I thought, well, I'll just be the way I am on talk shows, which is me, but funny. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah, I didn't have to figure out my persona. So yeah, it was a big advantage. And then I already had timing, but I had to learn how to. Still, you're up there by yourself, and then you have to learn. I knew how to write jokes, but an hour. I mean, in what order? And you have there's pacing, and it's a lot to learn. How to use the microphone. Um, and then it's different from acting. Like in theater, they go, "Don't break the fourth wall," meaning you pretend the audience, they're there, but you pretend they're not. But stand up, you're looking right at them.
Yeah.
Everything's opposite, and you're talking to them. And then I remember the first time, I'd say a joke and they would laugh, and then they stop, and I go, "Oh, another one." So you've no sense of rhythm or pacing, none of it. You have to learn all that.
Yeah.
And then the more you practice, you keep getting better and better. So I try to, like every show I do, try to get better. And now my big thing is just to relax, and then you can really think. And then the next show I go, okay, relax more, and then I go more, and that's all I've been doing now the last couple of years ago. Relax more.
Just making sure that
Yeah,
you're not getting ahead of yourself. You're not tripping over your words.
yeah, I don't rush.
Relax
And
and
Dana Carvey gave me some great tips that saved years. Like he said, the most important thing is have fun.
Hmm.
So if you're relaxed, you can have fun. And then the other thing he said was do a short setup and then stay on like a new topic. Like do set it up as few words as you can, and then do a lot of jokes on that topic, as opposed to a long setup and a punchline, and then switch topics, another long setup, one punchline, which a lot of comics do in the beginning. He goes, that's a recipe for exhausting the audience. And then when I got to 20 minutes of material, it seemed like I couldn't get past it. I can't think of any more jokes. And he goes, well, look at the topics you have and try to think of more jokes on that topic. And I was like, oh, in the beginning, you don't think of that. You don't know in the beginning. After years, he's just so that helped. He saved me years, actually.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, add tags to the premise that you're already working with versus trying to come up with a
Well,
complete.
if you have a jokes about I don't know, the president, so you go, I have 8 jokes about him, and you go, I need more time. I go, well, can you think of more jokes about that? Oh, or you make or relationships or travel or whatever your topic is. Uh, you just go, well, what? Because you're not. You go, okay, I can't think of anymore. You go, well, think on those topics, expand it. And then you go, oh, yeah, I can think of more. It just doesn't occur to you. Uh, and yeah, it's mostly practice, though. Just keep getting up. And you go, what worked, what didn't. Sometimes you try something and it's a funny idea, but they're not laughing. So you got to go, okay, I got to reword it. You know, it's interesting. But you can do anything in stand up, any kind of comedy. It's up to you. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is a unique art form for sure. I don't think I ever realized that you had opened for Norm at a certain point, and then you guys were co-headlining shows. Norm is one of my
Yeah.
all-time favorites. His deadpan wit is unparalleled, in my opinion. For you, as somebody who is friends with Norm, do you have a favorite Norm Macdonald story, John?
No, I don't know. One time we were at a casino in Biloxi, Mississippi, and we did a show. I was just opening, and then we did a show. He was headlining for a comp show for like the gamblers and stuff. So he was being pretty dirty, and someone yelled, "We don't like that kind of talk." And he goes, "Oh, well, how many of you don't like that kind of talk?" So it was almost everybody. And then he goes, "Well, all right, well, how many of you don't mind that kind of talk?" And there was like 10 people. So he goes, "Well, I hate to disappoint those 10 people for the other 300." And then he just got dirtier. So, and they didn't laugh. I was crying laughing.
Oh man, that's hilarious.
And I hate to disappoint those 10 people just because the other 300 don't like it.
Don't dare him. All right, last thing now, John. I love stand up. I think you love stand up comedy. You've been doing it and getting pretty good at it over
Yeah,
time.
I do. I was just in West Palm Beach. I was in Phoenix before that. Yeah, and I'll be in Austin. February 6th, 7th, and 8th at the Cap Cities Comedy Club. And yeah, it's fun. It's really fun. I
So
like making people laugh. So I still get a kick out of that.
that's right. I'm in Austin. Cap City is a phenomenal spot to perform and go watch stand up as well. You just said it, making people laugh. Is there anything else that you really love about stand up comedy?
Yeah, just the total freedom to be funny however you want. And just that. They used to do a sketch when I was in SNL, the limits of the imagination, and that's all it is. You can do anything. You know, you can sing songs, and play the piano. You can do poems. I mean, anything you can think of. It just doesn't matter. As long as they're laughing. Some comics thinks it's cool that they're not laughing. I'm like, okay, well, good luck with that.
Norm was actually, it seemed like he aimed for the awkward silence at times, but he also got a lot of laughs too.
Yeah, one time he did a show, it was an hour of that, and everybody walked out. So it's not always the best decision.
No, even if it's amusing oneself. He is the legendary Jon Lovitz. You have a chance to check him out at Cap City Comedy Club this weekend. Cannot recommend it enough. Cap City is a great spot to see stand up, and Jon is one of the best around. Jon, thank you so much for the time today, man. This has been a real pleasure. Safe travels to and from
You're
Austin.
welcome. Thank you very much.